Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here at Jacobstown. So we're back in Fallout New Vegas, and I'm repping the Legion today with my t-shirt, so that seems quite fitting. But we're here in Jacobstown, and it's time to talk about Marcus, who is going to be the final kind of featured super mutant, while we have this whole conversation around the FEV and the effects and the creation of the super mutants and things. So I thought it would end on a high with Marcus, because he's a very, very interesting character, and I have mentioned him a few times in the recent videos, as you may know, because he does play a significant role in the sort of mutant settlements in Fallout New Vegas. And he is also a character that had quite a significant role in Fallout 2 as a companion and things. So you can kind of see him wandering about over there. So this is Marcus, who does have a unique model compared to the other super mutants. He doesn't have the kind of thing in his face holding his lips up or anything, and he's got these kind of cool goggles and things. So Marcus was one of the original members of the Unity, one of the first generation super mutants created by the Master. He did hold a very strong belief in the vision of the Unity, that it would eliminate all the petty squabbles and fights that humans had. And he definitely had a desire to stop all forms of conflict and violence, which is something that he has retained since then. He doesn't, I mean, he obviously will fight if he has to, but he doesn't want to be fighting, and he doesn't want to have these violent kind of incidents between mutants and humans anymore. So he is one of the super mutants that retained his intellect, and he wants a future where humans and mutants can live together peacefully and kind of happily ever after, I guess, which is a noble goal. So he has quite strong leadership skills. This isn't the first town or settlement that he's been in charge of. He's been mayor a few times now, and he has got the respect of a lot of the kind of citizens of the towns that he's been in charge of in his time. So we'll have a wee chat with him first. Hi, Marcus.
Something on your mind?
So questions about Jacobstown.
Such as?
So basically, after the Master was defeated, he wandered the Waste and eventually encountered a Brotherhood of Steel Knight called Jacob, and they fought for several days until they kind of realised that it was pointless, had a good laugh, and became friends. So they travelled together, and they found more people that looked to them for protection. Obviously a super mutant and a Brotherhood Knight between them can help keep people pretty safe, you would think. So they ended up settling in an old mining town called Broken Hills, in the NCR area, and that was a mine for uranium. So after the winter, after they first kind of set up in this town, after the winter was over, Jacob left and the town in Marcus's capable hands and kind of went away, and he never returned. Well, Marcus stayed there, saw Broken Hills develop and prosper. They sold the uranium from the mine to like the local cities and towns like Vault City, but eventually Marcus became quite disillusioned because humans were humaning, and basically there was a lot of the kind of petty hatred and jealousy that showed up and caused some problems and tension within the community, which kind of proved to Marcus that the Master was right, that, you know, humans are always going to be humans and they're going to cause conflict with each other and things like that. So kind of interesting. So yeah, let's see, what's the history of Jacobstown?
Was a resort pre-war. I renamed it to Jacobstown after an old friend. Died a long time ago. I figured us mutants needed a place to call our own. Town's far enough away from humans so they don't bother us much. One of these days I'm hoping we can trade with the rest of the Wasteland. No more fighting, just get along.
Yeah, so that's what Marcus wants to achieve, and that's what he did. So eventually there was rumours of an anti-mutant conspiracy in Broken Hills, and Marcus found himself enlisting the help of a tribal, the Chosen One, which is obviously Fallout 2's protagonist. And once the issues at Broken Hills were handled, Marcus accompanied the Chosen One and helped bring down the Enclave and destroy the oil rig and everything, so he was a companion to the player character in Fallout 2. So after that was all said and done, Marcus moved on, headed east into the Rockies, and ended up collecting a group of super mutants on the way before he ended up here in the Mojave, where he discovered Black Mountain. So, he is willing to tell us.
Was part of a super mutant army. Ran a town, walked the wasteland with a tribal. Now I'm here.
Yeah, so that was the succinct kind of summary, but let's get his view. Super mutant army.
Long story, so here's the short version. The Master created the super mutants and Nightkin. The Master thought he could unify everyone. No more differences, no more war. It didn't end well.
So yeah, that's a fairly brief summary of the entire kind of story from Fallout, which obviously we have talked at length about that. So that's just quite a good summary. And then he was a mayor.
Town was Broken Hills. Bunch of super mutants, humans, and ghouls all living together peacefully. Well, most of the time.
So yep, that's basically it doesn't waste words, does Marcus? But yeah, so there was, mutants and ghouls and humans all living together, and it was, I believe, the ghouls and the mutants that were mining the uranium because they weren't affected by the radioactive ore that humans would be. So it all kind of worked until it didn't. So, tell us a bit about the tribal, Marcus.
We were looking for a Gek to save the village of Arroyo. Eventually, we did. Nuked an oil rig in the process. We went separate ways after that. I went east into the Rockies looking for other mutants like myself. Don't know what happened to my friend. I got a feeling it turned out all right in the end.
Yeah, so that was his role in Fallout 2, and then after that he collected a group of other mutants and they found himself at Black Mountain, which we did discuss when we were talking about Tabitha. So he ended up at Black Mountain and settled there with mutants. He felt like this was a good place, it was a safe haven. Humans avoided it because there had been a direct hit, and you do know if you go the back way into Black Mountain from Hidden Valley that there is a big radioactive crater there. So it took a direct hit and the area is radioactive, so he thought that's great because it'll keep the humans away. Humans aren't going to want to come and hang around here. So it seemed ideal, and he realised that he could use the radio equipment to let other super mutants know that this place existed. And then Tabitha came along with her Nightkin, and we did talk a lot about her last week. So she caused problems fairly quickly at Black Mountain because she was a Nightkin and she believed that she was superior to Marcus, who was obviously in charge, and the first generation mutants because she was a Nightkin. So after some problems where Marcus tried to help Tabitha and everything, they weren't going to resolve things, so he left Black Mountain and took his friends and followers and came here to Mount Charleston, which is quite picturesque. I think if in a remastered version it would look really, really nice. It does look kind of like a downgraded version of Skyrim, but very pretty with a little bit of snow and the trees and things like that. So it's an old ski resort, and he named it Jacobstown, obviously after the friend Jacob, who is almost certainly long dead at this point because that happened quite some time ago. But the goal, as he said, is he wants a safe haven for the mutants that they can live peacefully, build up good working relationships with the human settlements nearby, trade with them, and kind of just get along and be part of the kind of wider community in the Mojave, which isn't an easy thing to do. I do wonder about the major factions that are vying for control of the Mojave. I do wonder how they feel about this town of super mutants, because they're peaceful, they're friendly, they're not looking for trouble, they're not harassing people, they're not attacking people. And obviously we've got the fiends and things, so there's a bunch of humans that are attacking each other, but the mutants are not. So I don't really know what these big factions, how the NCR would feel about it, how the Legion would feel about it, and even how Mr. House would feel about it. I don't remember it being mentioned specifically by Mr. House or any of the other kind of faction leaders, but if you do know something and you think it's worth noting, let me know in the comments, and we'll see if there's anything, but it's not something that I really recall ever coming across as anybody talking about this place and talking about the mutants and how they would potentially feel. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see who would let the mutants be and who would decide that extermination's the answer, even though they are peaceful. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And then at some point before the game began, Dr. Henry arrived here at Jacobstown and was allowed to stay, so I think we can get into that if we talk about the Nightkin. So what's wrong with the Nightkin?
Nightkin suffers schizophrenia from the stealth boys they're always using. One of the reasons I settled Jacobstown was so they could be cured. While they're in town, the Nightkin aren't allowed to have stealth boys, so their craziness doesn't get worse. Trouble is, the Nightkin don't like being visible either. They don't take being exposed too well.
There we go. So yeah, that's kind of the thing, is that he's hoping to find a cure for the schizophrenia and the mental health problems that the Nightkin suffer from because of their stealth boy use, but he says that they struggle with not being allowed to use the stealth boys because then they are visible and they don't like being seen or being looked at. So kind of an interesting thing there. So Marcus did allow Dr. Henry and his assistant, who's a ghoul, to stay here and work on this cure. So it is a quest that you can get involved in, and it does also involve Lily, who's over by the Bighorners. She's obviously the mutant companion in this game. And I will be doing separate videos on the companions and their stories at some point, so that's why she's not been included in this. But Lily is part of that. She's on medication to try and control her psychiatric problems, and it's kind of having an impact. So you do get involved in that, and you do get involved in helping Dr. Henry with the research. So quite a few Nightkin decided to stay because this scientist was promising that he could cure their problems and make their lives a bit easier, which obviously sounded quite good to them. So they decided to stay, and among those that did is Lily here, as well as Keen, who you encounter when you're doing the quest, and Davison, who, if you have done Come Fly With Me, you know he's the leader of the Nightkin that are in the Retcon test site that are causing problems for the Bright Brotherhood. So Davison is the leader with his god slash imaginary friend Antler, and that was a whole thing. So basically the problem was that the research wasn't progressing fast enough for some of them. They didn't like how long it was taking and got impatient and decided to leave. I don't know where Marcus has wandered off to. Oh, there it is. So yeah, so some of them decided to leave, Davison and his group being one of them. They were just like, to hell with this, we're just going to go and find some more stealth boys and, you know, leave it at that. Lily is fine with her Bighorners, and she's kind of willing to stay and kind of tough it out. But when you're helping with the quest, Keen does come in and kick up a stink because he is like, this isn't happening, what's going on, why are you taking so long? And he gets quite irritated about it. So he is losing patience. And you can help kind of deal with the situation, but the town here and Marcus isn't short of problems. They are dealing with some Night Stalkers that are coming. Again, that's a side quest here. You get sent to investigate, because they're also dealing with some Night Stalkers that have come down with a slight case of invisibility because they ate a stealth boy. I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. That will be a question that I'll need to answer at some point in the Fallout series, so I will have to look into the history of the stealth boys and see if we can come up with any explanation for exactly how that would work. So that would be an interesting topic to cover later on. But it does cause the Night Stalkers to have the ability to be invisible, which is, you know, an interesting problem to have with the coyote slash rattlesnake hybrid things that are venomous and aggressive. So that's a problem that Jacobstown is dealing with, so you can help explain that and help deal with the situation. And the other issue that they are dealing with on a regular basis is harassment. So particularly there's a group, when you come here and you first come here, Marcus will ask you to help with this situation, and it's a group of NCR aligned mercenaries who don't like mutants, and we know that there are groups of humans that hate the mutants and are particularly biased against them and harm them, like what happened to Mean Son of a Bitch, who we talked about a few weeks back. I'll link that video in the description if you haven't seen it. He lives in Westside and helps defend Westside, but the poor guy has been through hell. So his story's really quite interesting and very sad. So Marcus will ask you to deal with these mercenaries because he thinks that maybe you will be able to persuade them more than he will because you're human. Because Marcus he's friendly and he's approachable. He's potentially a little bit too trusting, because you can con him out of potentially a significant amount of caps. So if you go and speak to the mercenaries and they say fine, we'll leave, but we will, as blackmail, like we want 2,000 caps or 2,500 caps or whatever it is. And then you can come back to Marcus and say they'll go if you give me money, and he'll give you the money. But you can lie to him and say that you need more caps, which you lose karma for because, you're basically stealing money from him for no reason. And you can come and ask Marcus for the money and then use a speech check to talk the mercenaries into going away and just keep the caps for yourself. Which again, not a nice thing to do, but it does seem like Marcus is maybe being a little bit too trusting with this random stranger that's just walked into town and said that, we're going to solve all your problems for you. But I think it's important to note for this quest that, you can use a speech check, you can use your NCR reputation if it's high enough, or you can use money. But obviously violence is always an option. In New Vegas, pretty much always any quest or any situation could be resolved with violence if you really want it to. And this quest is no different. But I think it's important to note that Marcus actually is quite angry if you choose that approach. I just wandered off again. So he doesn't react well if you kill these men. And the reason for that is because while he's not a pacifist, he wants a peaceful relationship with the local humans, so killing them on behalf of the mutants isn't going to help that situation, and he's worried that it's going to bring retaliation onto the town, maybe some more trouble from the NCR or other mercenaries that are going to come here and attack and cause problems for the mutants here, when he just wants this to be a safe haven for his fellow super mutants so that they can live peaceful lives, productive lives, and not have to worry about being harassed all the time. So I like Marcus. I think he's very interesting character. He's got quite an interesting story, and he really challenges the kind of stereotypes and preconceived notions about the super mutants. And I think especially for people who haven't played the classic Fallout games and have gone from Fallout 3 being the first game to then playing Fallout New Vegas, because in Fallout 3 almost all the super mutants you meet are big, dumb and angry, and you have to fight them, and they don't care about trading, they don't care about having peaceful interactions with human settlements and things. And then you come here, and again, depending on where you go first, you might find that there is aggressive mutants if you go to Repcon, which is a place that you can end up going very early in the game, or if you go to Black Mountain and the mutants attack you. So again, you would assume that they're all aggressive and they're all dangerous, but then you come here and you meet Marcus, and these guys don't shoot you on sight. Marcus wants you to talk to you, wants you to help, and you can kind of deal with them all peacefully. So he really does challenge these notions, and that's always an interesting thing for kind of storytelling and world building as well, is where, some mutants are aggressive or they're bad, but then you find out actually that's not always the case, and there are some that are peaceful and want to have a better relationship with the world around them without, just killing people and eating them and things like that. So, I think it's really, really good from a world building point of view just to see the difference in the different groups of super mutants, and it's so apparent when you talk to Marcus, as well as having that continuity. So again, if you have played Fallout 2 before coming to this, because this is pretty much a sequel to Fallout in Fallout 2, it picks up on some of the plot points from the earlier games and finishes them off. And Marcus is part of that because he was obviously a companion that you would have potentially travelled with in that game. And then you find, oh look, he's still here and he's starting this new town and keeping all his mutant friends safe and things. And I think it's really nice. So definitely an interesting character. I do really like him, and I do like this area as well because it's a bit different. And people think of Nevada, they think of the desert and they think it's all hot and things, but then, you're not too far away from the city of Las Vegas and there are mountains with snow on top and things like that. So, it's very interesting, and I like Marcus. I think he's a good egg. And I like that he does have this unique design with his armour and things, and his headgear, whatever that's for. Yeah, he's a good egg, and Ski Lodge isn't a bad place to be living for the rest of your life, especially if you're going to keep going for a few centuries. There's definitely worse places that you could live out your life than this. Right, oh, hello, okay, sorry, I didn't realise I was in your way, sorry Marcus. Yeah, no concept of personal space apparently, but here we are. So let me know what you think. I do think it's really interesting, and I like to see that, they've kind of flipped the script on certain things and be like, look, not all these mutants are actually evil. Some of them want to be cooperative, they want to be peaceful, but they're facing prejudice because they're different and they're not human anymore and all that kind of thing. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind, is that the circumstances of one's birth and one's existence on its own doesn't tell you what kind of person somebody is. And for me, I judge people based on their actions, really. That's the thing. I'm not someone that's going to look at someone and judge them and say, oh, well, you look like, you're going to be a creep, or you look like whatever. It's not about that, but it is about what people do. And I think that's saying that when people show you who they are, believe them. Not when they tell you who they are, because people lie about that, but when someone shows you who they really are, you need to believe them, because actions and decisions that people make say a lot more about them than what they look like, or how tall they are, or the colour of their skin. Any of that stuff doesn't really tell you about the substance of that person. There's more to it than that, and I think this kind of story here with Marcus and the mutants really kind of highlights a lot of that stuff. So hopefully you find that interesting. As always, love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't already to see more. The big Fallout 3 plot video essay is coming along. I'm nearly finished writing up the script and everything. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting, I think. So we shall see, and I'll keep you guys updated. Hopefully you come back on Saturday for the final part of the Science of Fallout with the mutants, where we're going to be talking about the centaurs, and we're going to be talking about the mutant hounds from Fallout 4 as well. So hopefully you'll come back for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.